Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the AI Integrations Podcast for episode 5. Back with me and Spencer. We've got a fun one today. We're going to be talking a bit about the future of AI, some predictions here. So, we're going to be looking at AI through 2025. And really,
35.
sorry, 35. Yes, 2035. And Spencer's going to be giving us his takes on where it's going to go. And I'm going to throw in a little color commentary here and there. And we'll see how this plays out. So, quick overview. What we're going to be looking at here is AI through 2035, the 2026 being the year of agents, 2027, the year that kills the iPhone, 2028, the rise of physical AI, 2030, are we looking at AI superintelligence, and finally 2035, an AI-powered world. So kicking off here with 2026, the year of agents. It says mass adoption across businesses of all sizes. The idea is agents are going to propagate everywhere. Where do you see this going? What makes it the year of agent, and what do you see that it's actually going to be, and what kind of outcomes are we looking at there?
Yeah, so since 2020, late 2022, when ChatGPT came out, we've been in, I'd call it a couple of years of like LLMs, chatbots, agents or not agents, AI interfaces that are kind of restricted to text-based conversations. And we've seen some upgrades there, but even if you look at OpenAI's rollouts, like we were talking about in the last podcast, they've got agent mode coming out, they've got more connectors. So essentially, an agent is going beyond the text-based interface and allowing the AI to do more. So I think we're going to see an uptick in that we already are seeing an uptick in that, to be very clear. But I think 2026 is when we'll start to see a mass adoption of agents across businesses of all sectors. They're going to become more commonplace the same way that ChatGPT did with time.
And what kind of problems do you really think that they're going to be solving with the agents?
Yeah, so in our world, agents can do a lot. Agents can, so like for our product Ava, agents are capable of, if our Ava was agentic, something we're working on, it'd be able to not only talk to you about the item that you want to buy, but actually help walk you through placing the order. So that'd be an agentic version of our product that we're working on. Agents, ChatGPT's agent is capable of browsing the web, connecting to your Google Drive, connecting to your GitHub, again, like we were talking about in the last podcast. So it's really allowing these text-based LLMs to start performing actions and actually, doing more than generating text for you.
And, it's funny that you say that right now, too, because I'm going to share another screen here in a moment, just for the fun of it. Here we go. Here's a pop it up. Here's an agentic model right here that's actively running, that is currently posting our social media, scheduling all of our posts for LinkedIn, and then it'll do X after that. And this is just an agentic model running. I built a prompt specifically for agentic, gave it what it's doing. Basically, I told, here's the prompt, here's your workflow, here's what you do for every post, here's your destinations, here's what you do at each step, here's your rules to follow. And this is connected to my Google Drive. It's connected to, signed into LinkedIn, into X, everything else through the integrations. And Agentic is now working as basically a junior level marketing employee, and just running that through GPT-5 with the Agentic. And this is something that wasn't possible for the average layperson, 3 weeks ago. And now there's the ability for anyone to do it. What do you really see is going to change between what's going on with it here right now and kind of the next, 2026? What's going to be the big difference? Right now it's still rocky, it's bouncy. There's a lot of work to get it going, and it's got a fair number of things you got to figure out and play with back and forth. How do you really see that developing in 26?
I see two key things happening with agents. I see them being more refined in their UI. As you pointed out, there's a lot of back and forth and trial and error to get it working well right now. And then additionally, I see, and ironically, based on our company name, I see it integrating with more things. And that's what I've always that's what's excited me about AI for the past 3 years, is watching the level of integrations rise. And so I see agents being integrated with just about every major platform out there. I think that we'll hit a point where it'll be expected for your website to kind of have MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, which allows agents to extract information. That's actually not how this one's working, ironically, now that I say that. But yeah, I see more integrations in the agent area over the next 6, 8, 12 months.
And with that, how soon do you think it's going to be till agents can basically do most of that entry-level work in most fields? Computer-based work where it has to walk through it step-by-step type thing.
Entry level, I see it happening midway through next year. That's why we made the prediction that 2026 would be the year of agents. On a reliable, consistent, like full-on, you wouldn't need a data entry clerk, or you, in this example, wouldn't need a junior marketing, employee. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then by the end of 2026, then being the year of agents, what do you think adoption rate's going to be for small businesses?
Small businesses, I would guess it's somewhere around 50%. I think that's probably a little optimistic, quite frankly. It's not because the technology isn't useful. I think it's because that typically in technology, small businesses are more towards the laggard side of the adoption curve. So I think that we'll start seeing and hearing more about how useful these are. I mean, again, we already are, but even more so in early 2026, which will spark the first wave of small business agentic AI adoptions.
Gotcha. So we're going to move over to agents basically fully. You're predicting for next year. And I mean, as you just saw, we're literally using them now. It's working while we're doing this podcast, doing our social media for us. And that's incredible. So we get through 2026. That's the year of agents. Then we're moving on to 2027, the year that kills the iPhone. Hardware redefined. Enlighten us.
So that's a bold claim, and I understand how big the iPhone has gotten within society. So Johnny Ives is partnered up with Sam Altman. I think it's something we've also mentioned on the podcast previously. And I believe they're planning on releasing hardware in late 2026, potentially early 2027. But they're redefining the way that, or they're reimagining, and potentially redefining the way that humans interact with computers. A smartphone was revolutionary when it came out. However, the technology is so much more capable now that we kind of need to imagine, well, what if we built a hardware device for artificial intelligence, not for traditional software? So I see Johnny Ives and Sam Altman and OpenAI releasing really cool hardware in late 2026. There's other companies working on it as well, like Meta Ray-Bans is, it's nothing extraordinary right now. I think it's a cool product. But what really excites me about Meta Ray-Bans is the potential for, the next 3-4 iterations of it, the augmented reality versions, which I believe Zuckerberg talked about on a Bloomberg podcast, a couple months ago. And then additionally, if you look at Oculus and Apple Vision Pro, in my opinion, those are very, very expensive R&D experiments, more so than they are products, in the sense that no one's going to daily drive a big goggle interface for 6, 8, 10 hours the way that we do an iPhone, an iPad, a computer, etc. However, with all the data and all the ways that they've learned that people use these goggles in 2-3 hour segments, it really gives them an advantage on building augmented reality. The last thing I'll say on that note is the most recent iOS update, iOS 26, I believe it's called, is focused on, from a UI perspective, the concept of liquid glass. And so, some people are giving it a hard time, but one thing I think's telling is that liquid glass gives you a see-through UI feeling. Granted, right now on an iPhone or a MacBook or whatever other Apple device you have, a see-through UI could be really useful in some form of augmented reality glass as well. So I believe, Meta's working on it. Google brought out Google Glass like 10 years ago. I'm sure they're working on it as well. Apple's working on it, and OpenAI is working on it. And really, just when I say working on it, I mean reimagining the way that humans interact with computers, both from a smartphone and a desktop, laptop perspective.
So you don't see the iPhone going away in the sense that the device will still be physically far fairly similar, at least at first. But really, its nature, its functionality, what you're using it for is what's going to change. I mean, when you look at it right now already, nobody uses a phone as a phone. Nobody's calling people. Nobody's doing anything. I mean, sure, there's a little bit of texting, this and that, but it's predominantly just used as a handheld computer. How does that change with AI?
So I believe the original versions are going to use your phone that's in your pocket, and it'll kind of use it as a computer booster pack in a sense. I don't know exactly how, and maybe I'm a little off here. I'm definitely more of a software than a hardware guy. But I believe that originally you'll have some kind of glasses and a phone. And then eventually over time, as we're able to get more and more powerful compute in a small wearable interface, the phone will kind of fade away. But in the original version in 2027, or late 2026, we'll see. These are just predictions. I believe that, rather than taking a call on your phone, you'll just tap right here on your glasses and you'll be able to take the call through integrated speakers and everything. You can see text pull up in augmented reality. I don't know if people will go as far as, the whole scrolling social media thing will be something that I believe will be harder to get right in augmented reality glasses or devices. But as far as texts, emails, calls, the original purpose of a phone, I could see, AI powered hardware doing that for us late 2026, early 2027.
And when do you think the hardware is going to be completely, I'm thinking like Neuralink, right? When do you think the hardware is going to become outdated, that it's not about hardware anymore, it's about wetware?
So that's an interesting one. I think that the limiter there won't be technology. It'll be more of a regulatory thing. The idea of, we've talked about this on the podcast prior as well. The idea of putting a chip in your brain is very foreign to a lot of people. But however, so was a computer when it first came out. So was a smartphone when it first came out, right? So I believe we'll see an adoption there. I think
27.
Yeah, not 27. That'd be more. I would speculate, and I don't know a lot about this area, but I would speculate, 2030, 2037, somewhere in the 2030s is when we'll actually see Neuralink see a good adoption rate or a similar product. Elon's not the only one working on that. He's just got the most ground and, the biggest lead right now, so to speak.
Gotcha. Okay. So 27, kill the iPhone, hardware gets redefined. Everything's AI first from a design perspective, from a functionality perspective. It's not about the phone, it's about the AI at this point. Then we move into 2028. You're saying the rise of physical AI, Optimus, Robotaxi, and more. Those things are obviously out now. They're still in their kind of beta phase, if you will. When you say the rise of physical AI, are we talking it's fully operational at this point? It's getting there, or are we talking full adoption, or are you thinking more along the lines of, we're getting to the point where people are talking about getting rid of driver's licenses because AI cars are going to be the only option?
Yeah, so I think 2028 for physical AI will be very similar to 2025 for AI, like non-physical, like ChatGPT style AI. I.e., there's plenty of more adoption to come, but its value will have been proven. The regulatory will be relatively worked out, to a point where we can start having, testing across multiple cities and multiple businesses. One of the things that I read an article, and I don't know exactly how many Chipotle locations there are off the top of my head, but there's thousands of Chipotles, right? So if you put an Optimus in each Chipotle, you can be like, oh, well, how's it going to learn how to roll a burrito? Well, one of the cool things about Optimus is it's able to learn from the other Optimus's experiences in a sense, right? So within a couple hours of Optimus's being at Chipotle, every Optimus will have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of work experience. They'll have seen all the weird, combinations and how to do things. So I believe.
You think the learning curve is basically like this for AI because they're sharing knowledge?
Yeah, as opposed to a human worker. And
Gotcha.
I don't mean that in a negative way towards human workers. It's just the way, Optimus has a massive brain that's able to share with other optimists, and we as humans don't have
Right,
that.
that collective intelligence, if you will, that an AI has, where every, when you're chatting with an agent right now, unless you tell it not to share any data and not to make it better for other people, I guess every chat now is training every other AI, arguably to a certain extent.
Yeah, and that's partially why OpenAI is releasing the feature in this kind of loose beta. Is, again, like we talked about with GPT-5 on the last podcast, they have to get that feedback on how people are using it, what's going well, what's not going well. A lot of the times, at least in my interface, it'll ask me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, give feedback after it's done doing an agentic thing. And that's to help them sort the data.
When it does that, do you actually respond?
Yeah, I do. Because, and I get I'm an outlier, but as someone who appreciates what they're trying to do, I think it will not only benefit me, but a lot of other people if they get it done better, quicker. And I think one of the best ways they can do that is quality user feedback. So yeah, I spend the time.
So note on that, when you spend the time to say good, bad, otherwise, does that actually directly change your experience within your own ChatGPT? Is it learning from that, or is that just giving feedback to OpenAI for the future?
That's just giving feedback to OpenAI for the future. I don't think it actually changes within the interface. The way you change within the interface is you make better and better prompts. You learn it did something stupid, so then you in the prompt you say, "Don't do X thing," something you might not have thought of originally, but you watched it do in its first run, so then you edit your prompt for when you do it again.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going, the rise of physical AI in 2028, and then we're moving in 2030, estimating, AI superintelligence, the death of software. What does AI superintelligence really mean to you? And then explain a bit about the death of software, if you don't mind.
So AI superintelligence is an AI that's essentially smarter than any human. It's a scary concept to a lot of people, but it's also really cool in the sense that the AI superintelligence is something, Meta just spent insane money on. Well, I say just has been spending insane money on recruiting talent to build superintelligence. OpenAI has been working on it for, it's one of their company missions. Elon's working on it as well. And so is Google. I don't want to leave anyone out on this list. I'm sure there's more I didn't mention. But super intelligence essentially is an AI that's smarter than any human in any given sector. And what's really cool about that is then, programming and AI development is one of those sectors. So a super intelligence can become a self-refining system. And so they're working on that. It's already in its loose, phases right now. But I believe regulatory and compute constraints are going to kind of extend that timeline out to 2030.
So, with the rise of AI superintelligence, your predictions, is this the end of the world? Is it the start of a new era? Or is it honestly just another day business as usual, but the AIs have gotten better?
I think it's a start of a new era in the sense that having intelligence, book smarts, will become less, I'm not going to say desirable, but less leveraged. And more of what you do with those book smarts will, the street smarts, quote unquote, will become more valuable because that's one of the things the AI and even super intelligence won't be great at. So the ability to memorize, say, an entire programming library or an entire subset of law will become kind of obsolete. However, the ability to implement those things will become arguably more valuable because we'll need more implementation. And that kind of brings me to the death of software as well. I don't mean the death of, there's still going to be software, but I believe it'll be very personalized software. Rather than everyone using Microsoft Excel, for example, you could say, oh, super intelligence, build me a Excel style platform, but I want these 5, 6, 7 tweaks. And so then it'll be more of a personalized generation of software rather than a commercialized generation of software.
If we take that to the next step, are we going to be at the point where you could talk to your AI and go, hey, I need software to do this, and it's going to be able to just build that for you?
Depending on what this is, but 80% of use cases, probably.
Interesting. What does that do to the SaaS industry as a whole?
It's going to be interesting. So there's a lot to software. So I forget who said this, Oh, I think it was Sam Altman. I don't know. It might be, but we're entering the fast fashion era of SaaS. I.e., it's not like SaaS is going to die. It's just going to product iterations and new products are going to come out at a rate we've never seen before. So I think that's more like what we'll see. I know internally at AI Integrations, our goal is going to be building features like on a monthly, if not weekly basis, new big features, something that previously would have taken us maybe 6 months, now takes us 6 days. And so I think that SaaS will become, the bar will get raised. I think a lot of people still won't want to, AIs can essentially build you a mock website right now. Yet a lot of people aren't doing that. It's because the quality control and the ability to have a human in the loop is desirable in software. And so that's kind of what I see happening in SaaS.
But by 2030, we're probably not going to have as much of that need for that human either, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. So AI superintelligence doesn't end the world, but it does really kick off a new generation of honestly making life easier. There's a scary part too. You mentioned that, in human intelligence becomes almost arguably less important. Do you worry about the dumbification of society, if you will? Everyone knows more than they ever did because they have all the information in the world in their pocket. And they're learning more than they ever did because they're reading it. But from a lot of the recent studies are saying people aren't actually retaining the information when they do it this way through ChatGPT. So the thing is, yes, we have answers to every one of the world's problems these days. It's kind of like we're walking around with an entire encyclopedia, which we've had, obviously with Google and a phone for years now, but to the point where people are letting AI answer all their questions for them, do everything for them. As we move towards this AI super intelligence, are you worried that we're going to end up, going the way of idiocracy?
I think that, so the optimist in me thinks that people's social skills and people's interaction with each other, again, there's multiple kinds of intelligence. We talked about that on the last podcast. There's IQ and then there's EQ. So I think EQ stuff is going to become even more valuable. And one thing that excites me is that people will be able to focus more on people-to-people interactions. They'll be able to spend less time Googling things. I do think that people will know less IQ style information off of the top of their head. However, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. And I know that sounds a little controversial, but when the internet came out, a bunch of people were like, "Oh, we're going to ruin libraries. We're going to ruin knowledge." I got in trouble.
I don't think I set foot in a library since the internet came out.
Yeah, but overall, society's benefited from the internet, right?
Oh, well, yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no. I agree. But we have an abundance of knowledge. Someone in rural Africa with access to the internet essentially has access to the world's knowledge. And, I get that's, you have to assume they have access to the internet, but it's more than likely easier to access the internet than a library.
You're also basically decentralizing knowledge then at that point and just giving it freely to everyone without having to go to a university or anything else, spend money to get an education type thing. You have that all at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And so brings up an interesting question. Will people use it? Right now it's easier to get smart than ever before.
Correct.
Right. With the internet and with AI, you can learn any topic. And when you see people doing it all the time, there's, kids are becoming programmers, everything else right now, just using AI, right? Becoming artists, this, that, the other thing. Once we hit super intelligence, we end up with less need for the human input. Do humans go, this is nice, this is easy, kick back, relax, and let the AI super intelligence run the world? Or is that a moment where people go, now the AI can do it all, I need, do people go, oh, gee, let's let it do it? Or do they go, oh, great, now I'm going to be even more needy because everybody's using this. So a human specialization becomes more important.
I think it'll be a mixture of the two. Again, making the parallel to the internet, when the internet came out, you could argue people wouldn't need to learn as much because you have access to it via the internet. However, part of that is people then took that extra, call it bandwidth, and went and started studying even harder in certain niches, right? So I think it'll be a combo of the two. I don't know what your everyday Joe will do, so to speak. But I think the PhDs and like the researchers of this world in their fields will try to push beyond the super intelligence, and it'll be an interesting almost battle between who can discover this
Smarter.
new property of physics first, a lab at MIT or the super intelligence. And I think that'll be an interesting era for humanity.
Yeah, that is interesting because I think you're right there. I think specialized deep knowledge is actually going to become more important because while AI has it, nobody uses it. People use AI to get a cursory understanding of everything. It's like the Cliff Notes for the world, right? And I think people who go, okay, great, I read the Cliff Notes, but then go, this is interesting, really, really deep dive, like like I have on marketing, human behavior, etc. You can gain an understanding that sure, do AIs in a sense know everything I know? Well, yeah, somewhere in their database somewhere is probably every word I've ever read, right? But at the same time, when it hits that super intelligence level, is it going to be able to truly embody like a role of a thing and be that thing? Because I notice right now when you ask it, you go, pretend you're this and do that. Once it's a super intelligence, can it just take a role? So for example, let's say, I'm in marketing, I want to use it for marketing. I go, hey, I want you to handle the marketing for this and that. Will it at that level be able to just go, okay, great, I will be the CMO, the VP, the whole marketing chain, figure out what all those pieces are and then work with itself, if you will, to coordinate and handle all that on its own? Like, I'm wondering, once we hit that super intelligence level, where does the need for the human come in? At what level of detail?
Yeah, so I'd like to answer your question with a question. How much of what you do is pure book knowledge versus learned human interaction knowledge?
For me, it's interesting because it's a combination. It's, at this point, it's 30 years or 25 years of book knowledge added on to an additional 20 years of experience. Because, I've read literally almost every book in my field that matters out there, hundreds of them. And I'm reading new ones all the time. But I've also been putting it into practice for 20 years. Now, the AI won't have that practice, but can't it, through data, basically figure out what the practice taught you by looking at what people did and what the results were and see what works? Really what's experience about. So what works, what doesn't, and having an innate knowledge of that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what Google Ads does already at a much smaller extent, right? Is it learns from its data. On a marketing note, I meant that in the sense of, so the more you interact with other humans, right, just as a general concept, the more your EQ and your personability matter, right? So if you're a pure, drug chemical researcher, let's call that 95% IQ, 5% EQ. AI, in my opinion, will have a much easier time doing a job like that than it would a speaking coach or a presenter. Or I believe, way more about marketing than I do. I believe marketing is probably somewhere around 50-50. What's your thoughts on that? How much is EQ versus IQ?
It is one of the most EQ human facing industries that exists. I was reading Michael Levine's Guerrilla PR 2.0 last night, which was 15 years ago, mandatory reading for basically all businesses and schools, anyone into marketing. And it brings up a point early on in the book, excuse me. And it says, marketing, it's a human endeavor, and it's about connecting. It's about being a part of, having your finger on the pulse of a community, etc. And the fact that anywhere you go, you can tell who the marketers are if you're in a room, because they're the ones interacting with other people, interested in everything. They're always trying to learn something, always want to know what everything is, and they're always trying to live in someone else's world, right? What I don't know is how much will an AI super intelligence be able to replicate a pseudo version of that background without actually being human, without having EQ.
Yeah. So I just asked ChatGPT an interesting question. So let's see. So our human brain has 86 billion neurons in it, right? And it fires at around 200 hertz, which means 200 times per second. Yep. So let's see what that turns out to be in
processing power.
Processing power. This is just ChatGPT's answer, and I haven't done a bunch of research on this, but it's saying between 1 and 10 petabytes.
Okay.
So if you think about that, in order for it to be able to, in theory, understand all we are, you need to take up 1 to 10 petabytes of compute. And that even needs to be specialized to be, you know, your 1 to 10 petabytes, not my 1 to 10 petabytes, right? So in order for AI to like truly even have a chance at understanding everything that we do in a sense, from an EQ, IQ, everything perspective, you need 1 to 10 petabytes of personal compute per, on. So, you scale that out to ChatGPT's 700 million users, and that's more compute that's in the world by, a factor of hundreds, if not thousands currently. So I think that it understanding, and, I'd be interested to do some research on how much of that 86 billion neurons is really, like, call it IQ, informational, etc. And what is the other parts of what makes a human, right? Because a human's more than just their ability to be an encyclopedia of information, right? So I think to get the IQ part of it down will be this. That's what super intelligence is defined as by a lot of people, is like really being better IQ aspects than most people. To get the EQ and the IQ part down, I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime. I don't know if it'll happen in 2040. That's a very hard concept to grasp.
True robotic humans in the sense of can't tell them apart other than the fact that they're made out of metal.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and then finally, I want to jump to, real quick on the AI superintelligence. It's exciting. It's interesting. Little scary, but there's so much potential. And I think what you said about it's really the start of a new era. I think I completely agree in the sense that I'm excited to see what happens once we get to AGI. And then finally, jumping into 2035, your predictions for a full decade out from now, AI-powered world, everything.
Yeah. So
tell me, tell me what does the AI-powered world look like to you?
So that's when we start to see like truly mass adoptions of some of the other things we've been talking about. That's when you go to your local Chick-fil-A or Subway or whatever, and Optimus can make, it's run by Optimuses. That's when Uber drivers don't exist and robo-taxis are, standard for the course. I do think by 2035, it wouldn't surprise me if over half the cars on the road are AI powered. It's not human driving. Another thing is super intelligence seeing big adoption by then. I believe that, like any technology, and we've talked about many times, there's an adoption cycle. I believe most businesses will be using super intelligence for personalized software, for personalized information, etc. by 2035. So it's really the mass adoption of the other things we've talked about.
Gotcha. So 2035 really being that sci-fi world we all thought would be here already from Back to the Future when I was a kid. You're thinking 2035 is kind of when we're there, when you walk outside and there's robots driving cars down the street, bringing people around. You go to the store and it's robots helping you and everything's just running on AI. Yeah.
And we'll see if regulatory lets that happen. I think regulatory and legal will be the biggest hurdle there as opposed to technology. But yeah, by 2035, I envision a world where I just tell my Optimus to go do my grocery shopping. It goes and hops in a robo-taxi. Robo-taxi drives it to the store. It meets with Walmart or Costco or Trader Joe's Optimus and says, I need these things. Trader Joe's Optimus goes and gets those things. Or sorry, it's already communicated. It has the things ready.
I'm already ready at the door.
Yeah, already ready at the door. Just hands it off. Optimus gets back and the robo-taxi comes back and sorts it all out in my fridge and then asks me if it wants to make me, or if I want an omelet or if I want a steak, and it can just make those things.
Interesting. I think on the regulation side, the biggest thing we actually have to be worried about is control. If AI can do all those things, right? Well, then who's pulling the strings? Who owns it? In the sense of, is it completely monopolized? Because if it is, whatever company is running it, if you will, it's just going to become the most powerful entity on the planet Earth, right?
Oh, by far.
That, I think, from a regulatory standpoint, is actually one of the scariest parts, is that we become dependent on a single AI. Whereas, the other hand is they over-regulate and we don't get progress, and we lose to China really quickly. And it's their robot soldiers end up marching in because they like our land and it's pretty, right? So with that whole regulation issue, do you know who's leading that right now?
So the White House put together kind of our tech leaders, from Ginseng to Mark Zuckerberg to Sam Altman to Elon, Larry Ellison. I don't know who represented Google. I think Sundar Pichai actually represented Google. But they've kind of had a powwow of minds on this. And I think what will more than likely happen for regulatory and competitive advantage, and we're already kind of starting to see this, is they're going to specialize in subsets, right? So rather than having OpenAI do everything AI related, let's pretend OpenAI kind of handles the model, let's say. And then Zuckerberg handles the way it integrates with social media. And then Ginseng's building all the hardware to make it happen. Elon's building the robots and the robo-taxis. So I kind of see a coalition of forces,
if you will.
Yeah. And I mean, I would argue that's already a thing with technology, right? There's probably 5 or 6 technology companies that are responsible for the majority of the technology we use on a day-to-day basis. It's just
Google, Apple, Intel, and
Microsoft, NVIDIA.
Basically, and that's pretty much most of them right there.
Yeah, and Tesla's being an up-and-comer, and that is XAI as well. But yeah, so that's what I think would be the most logical and the most checks and balance style. Now, will that happen? Time will tell. For example, Elon with his X app, he's trying to make X the go-to for everything. He's trying to make it, you can order a robo-taxi, you can, trade your Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency is another fun conversation in this as well. Will AI basically spur on crypto into, a ridiculous trajectory? I think there's a pretty good chance of that. Yeah, so that's what I hope happens. I think that's what's trying to happen right now. Will it happen? Who knows?
That's another story entirely. Well, okay, coming back to this one last time here. So here's kind of the predictions through 2035. Any final notes, Spencer? Anything you want to add? Anything we missed?
Yeah, I think that the number one bottleneck on all of these is going to be regulatory and compliance. I think that the technology as a whole is going to progress quicker than the numbers we put up here. I think that the reason we put those numbers up is, well, the reason I made these predictions is because it takes time for regulatory and compliance. And I believe that with the most powerful technology since electricity, in a lot of people's opinions, we need to do our due diligence with regulatory and compliance.
Got it. Well, hey, let's see if we can get you on Capitol Hill if we need.
One day.
Well, hey, that's a podcast for today. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you for anyone watching. Once again, as always, please leave any comments anywhere this is posted. It'll be you're streaming live on LinkedIn. You can also find us on X and YouTube. Please reach out with any questions or check us out at aiintegrations.tech. And you can see some of the exciting stuff we're up to. We will probably not be having a podcast next week, but we should see you hopefully the week after that. Have a wonderful couple weeks, everybody. Talk to you all later. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, happy holiday weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to you later. Bye.